My hand trembled as I opened my bank app, tears blurring the numbers on the screen. "Get this beggar out," my father sneered, his voice slicing through the grand ballroom like glass. The security guard's hand gripped my arm, and my mother, she didn't even look at me. That silence hurt more than any insult could. They didn't know that everything around them, the chandeliers, the champagne, the music, was mine, paid in full. With one swipe, I could take it all away. And I did. The sound of betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet, like a tap on a phone screen before a life collapses. But before I share my story with you, I'd love to know you're here with me. Drop a simple "hi" in the comments so I know you're listening, or tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my story can reach. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. If this story hits something inside you, don't forget to subscribe. My name is Ryan Carter, and this is the price of silence. I never thought a single sentence could tear through me the way his did. Get this beggar out. My father's voice carried through the Crestview Grand Hotel like a blade across glass. Heads turned. Laughter stilled, and the air in the ballroom folded in on itself. The chandeliers flickered above polished oak floors, the smell of champagne and salt air mingling from the open terrace. I stood rooted between the marble columns, holding the invitation I'd been told was an obligatory courtesy, the same invitation my father now pretended I'd forged. The security guard approached, his hand hovering near my arm as if touching me would shame him too. I looked at him, steady but hollow, and whispered, "It's fine. You don't have to drag me." My mother, Susan, stood behind my father, her fingers twisting the strap of her clutch, her eyes darting anywhere but toward mine. Emily, my younger sister, smirked, the same smug curve I'd seen since childhood whenever I refused to fund one of her whims. And Nathan Brooks, her fiancé, heir to a Boston banking family, only shrugged before topping off his drink. I walked past them, each step a quiet rebellion. The scent of ocean air filled the corridor as I left the grand hall for the parking lot. My reflection followed me in the mirrored elevator doors, vest perfectly pressed, face strained. In the car, I sat for a long moment before unlocking my phone. My hand trembled as I opened the banking app. My throat tightened when I saw the list of transactions, each one carrying my company's name: Carter Solutions LLC, authorized payment, the hotel deposit, the floral arrangements, the entertainment fee, the chartered flights. Every cent that built tonight's illusion of wealth came from me. I took a breath that scraped like broken glass. For years, I'd paid to be tolerated, paid to belong. But in that moment, staring at the screen, the humiliation burned cleaner than rage. "They forgot," I whispered, "that the hand they bite is the one holding the receipts." I scrolled to the bottom of the page where the button waited: revoke, cancel, freeze. My thumb hovered. The memory of the Hilton Head condo flashed in my mind, mother bragging about her retirement home, though the deed was under my company's name. They built their pride on borrowed money and called it legacy. Outside, waves crashed faintly against the rocks. I pressed my thumb to the screen. The confirmation message blinked: transaction reversed. Authorization revoked. The air in the car shifted, colder, clearer. For the first time in years, I felt the silence didn't belong to them anymore. It belonged to me. The night they called me a beggar would be the night they learned who owned the table they were feasting on. Back in Austin, the city slept while my desk lamp painted everything gold. The contingency binder lay open, its tabs color-coded: housing, travel, events, family expenses. It was a ledger of my own making, a record of every dollar they'd ever asked for, every promise wrapped in words like urgent, temporary, for the family's reputation. My company, Carter Solutions, had grown from a startup in a one-room loft to a multi-state logistics firm. And somewhere along the way, I became the family's quiet investor, the one who saved the Carters from their own vanity. It started small: a roof repair after a storm, a hospital bill for my mother, then help for Emily's business degree that never happened, a loan for my father's retirement cabin that was resold within months. The requests always came wrapped in guilt: family helps family. You owe us for everything we sacrificed. But sacrifice, I'd learned, had receipts too, and mine filled entire drawers. 3 years ago, after a heated argument about money, I told them I wouldn't transfer another dollar without structure. They laughed until I sent them contracts. From that day forward, every cent moved through Carter Solutions LLC. Every purchase, every vendor, every rental carried a clause: the financier retained sole authority to revoke funding at any time. They signed, thinking it was symbolic. They never imagined I'd use it. Now, under the lamplight, I flipped through copies of those agreements, each one bearing my signature, each payment linked directly to my corporate account: the Hilton Head condo, the hotel block for tonight's event, even the honeymoon package Emily bragged about on social media, all mine, legally, financially, and now strategically. On my desk sat an encrypted drive containing every transaction. The faint hum of the computer felt like a heartbeat in the room. I paused, staring at the top page labeled Brooks Carter Engagement Fund. My jaw tightened. I'd paid for the entire event to protect the family's image so my father wouldn't be embarrassed in front of the Brooks clan. He'd always cared more about perception than reality. "You'll understand one day, son," he'd once told me. "Image is everything." Tonight, that image had collapsed in front of 40 witnesses. I reached for my pen and began writing a list: revoke authorizations, freeze travel cards, audit family trust, verify asset titles. Each word steadied me, like drawing battle lines. A notification pinged from my phone, email stacking up, authorization revoked. Hotel account closed. Vendor access denied. I leaned back, the sound of my own breathing filling the quiet. The phone vibrated again, this time with a call, Nathan Brooks, then another from Emily Carter. I watched their names flash and fade, one after another, like ghosts trying to claw through glass. I didn't answer. Not tonight. Tonight wasn't about explanations, it was about balance. I set the binder aside and looked out through the window at the dark Texas skyline. For the first time, I wasn't the family's ATM or their safety net. I was the auditor, the one who finally realized that love without respect is just another line item waiting to be crossed off. And when I closed my eyes, I could still see the ballroom, the light, the laughter, my father's smirk, and the single swipe that turned their world upside down. Tonight marked the end of paying for belonging. From here on, everything would be accounted for. The pounding at my door began before sunrise, sharp and rhythmic, like a debt collector's knock. 7:12 a.m. I didn't move at first. The light spilling through the blinds cut stripes across the hardwood floor, and for a few seconds, I told myself whoever it was would give up. They didn't. I rose, checked the camera feed on my phone, and there he was, Nathan Brooks, hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled, fury vibrating through the pixelated frame. I pressed the intercom. "You should know," I said evenly, "you're standing outside the home of the person who paid for your entire wedding weekend. You want to talk about law or apology?" He froze, mouth open. "They canceled everything, Ryan," he hissed. "The food, the hotel rooms, even the honeymoon flights. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I leaned against the doorway, still not opening it. "Yes," I said. I confirmed my ownership. His jaw flexed, confusion blending with fear, the first time he seemed to grasp that the wallet behind every Carter celebration had always been mine. I set the contingency binder on my kitchen table, flipped to the vendor section, and started a video call with the hotel manager. The woman's voice came through crisp and apologetic. "Yes, Mr. Carter, as per your company's contract, we can confirm all authorizations were under Carter Solutions LLC, with sole revocation rights belonging to you." Nathan's face drained of color. "You're lying," he said weakly. "Am I?" I turned the phone toward the speaker icon, letting him hear his own name in the confirmation notice. "You all should have read the fine print before biting the hand that fed you." While he stormed down the walkway, muttering threats about lawyers and bad press, another notification blinked across my screen, an unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the name in the preview line, Thomas Reed, my parents' accountant. I answered. His voice trembled slightly. "Ryan, I need to tell you something. Last year, your company's EIN was used to open a line of credit in Boston for the property Emily and Nathan are living in." My hand tightened around the phone. "Send me the documents, all of them, metadata, authorization chain, everything." Minutes later, a PDF loaded on my laptop. The digital signature at the bottom was mine, or looked like it. Thomas's follow-up text appeared almost immediately. "That signature image came from a scanned ID of yours, the one on file before you renewed your passport." A hollow laugh slipped out of me. "They forged my identity," I whispered. The edges of the binder pages scraped against my skin like cuts. I scrolled through the files again, eyes catching on the property details. The Hilton Head condo, my condo, the one I'd held in the company's portfolio, had been listed as collateral in a verbal agreement made by my father. A verbal agreement. I closed my eyes, picturing him sitting across from some bank officer, bluffing ownership, gambling with something that was never his. I sat down hard, the weight of betrayal settling in layers. My mother had always known about the little manipulations. "Don't make a fuss, Ryan, it's family." How many times had she hidden the truth under the excuse of protecting Emily's reputation? How many times had I mistaken her silence for peacekeeping when it was really complicity? I called Lauren Mitchell, my financial attorney, and summarized everything. She didn't waste time with sympathy. "Here's what we do," she said, her voice calm and surgical. "Step 1, issue cease and desist letters for unauthorized use of your EIN and signature. Step 2. Send notices of revocation to every vendor, bank, and institution connected to them. Step 3. File title affirmations for all assets under Carter Solutions, especially Hilton Head. Step 4. Begin a forensic audit of all family-related transactions from the last 5 years. I nodded, jotting it all down, though I knew I'd already memorized each step. She paused. You ready for this, Ryan? Once you start, there's no taking it back. I stared at the falsified signature glowing on the screen. I was ready the moment he called me a beggar. When the call ended, I compiled every document into a folder labeled Audit Phase 1 and pressed send. My phone lit up again, this time a text from my mother. Don't make a scene, son. I'll explain everything. I locked the screen without replying. For years, their words had drowned out the facts. Now, the facts were about to speak louder than any apology ever could. 3 nights later, I drove through a drizzle thick enough to smear the world into reflections. The Carter house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac outside Boston, its manicured hedges glistening under streetlights. I'd funded every inch of it, the remodel, the marble foyer, even the new driveway. And yet, I'd never truly been welcome inside. The porch light flicked on as I parked. Through the window, I could see the faint outline of my father's silhouette, a glass of whiskey in his hand. I walked in without waiting to be invited. The air smelled of polish and rain. You're early, my father said, not looking up. I didn't think you'd have the courage. My mother stood behind him, arms crossed over her cardigan, eyes wet but sharp. I'm not here to fight, I said, setting my briefcase on the table. I'm here to reclaim what's legally mine. He scoffed. You're embarrassing yourself. Are you really dragging your own family into court over a misunderstanding? I opened the case and laid down 2 documents, the bank statement and the scanned signature authorization. A misunderstanding doesn't involve forged identification. I slid the paper across the table, the heading glaring under the chandelier, signer authorization, falsified copy. My mother's voice cracked. You're twisting this. Your father only wanted to help Emily start her life. The loan was temporary. I looked at her, the betrayal in my chest spreading like cold water. So, you helped him use my name, my company, my property, just to make sure your daughter looked successful. The glass in my father's hand shattered, amber whiskey spilling across the table and dripping onto the carpet, his knuckles bleeding in thin red lines. You think you built all this by yourself? He shouted. We made you who you are. I leaned forward, voice low. You built nothing. You just borrowed from me until there was nothing left to borrow. Silence settled, heavy, broken only by the ticking clock on the mantel. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and turned to leave. My mother reached out as if to stop me, but her hand fell short. Behind me, she whispered something I wasn't meant to hear. I had to protect our name. Outside, the rain turned steady. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed again, a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once before answering. A voice I didn't know said, "Check the Carter Trust. They've been using your name there, too." The line went dead. I sat behind the wheel, watching the house through the rain-streaked windshield. Behind those windows, I could almost see them moving in panic, plotting their next performance, deciding which story to tell the world to make me look like the villain. I started the engine and drove toward Boston's downtown, the city lights reflecting off wet asphalt. By the time I reached my apartment, an email from Lauren was waiting, subject line, preliminary audit result, urgent. I opened it, and the first line hit like a slap. Trust withdrawals, repeated misuse over 5 years, total $612,000. I sat back, letting the weight of it settle. $612,000 siphoned quietly under my name, my trust, my supposed generosity. The numbers didn't even make me angry anymore, they just made me tired. This family never needed me, I said to the empty room. They only ever needed my account. The sound of rain against the glass filled the silence. Somewhere between the echo of my father's voice and the flicker of my laptop screen, I realized I'd crossed the line from son to adversary. There would be no turning back, not now, not after I'd seen what they were capable of. And as the night deepened, I began drafting the next phase of my plan. The facts would speak, and when they did, no one in that house would be able to hide behind the Carter name again. Morning light flooded the conference room at Lauren Mitchell and Partners, slicing through the glass like a scalpel. The air smelled of ink and disinfectant, clinical, exact, and cold. I sat across from Lauren, her dark hair tied back, eyes sharp as she moved between screens and printouts. On the whiteboard behind her, lines of numbers connected by red marker formed a map of betrayal, arrows, accounts, initials, my family dissected down to their transactions. Here, she said, tapping the board, $84,000 marked as education fund, used for Emily's kitchen renovation. $120,000 to Brooks Holdings, labeled Strategic Partnership, no attached invoice. And this, she clicked to a new slide, $37,000 for property taxes on the Hilton Head condo, the one your father claims is his. The fluorescent light hummed overhead. I felt my pulse in my fingertips, but my voice stayed even. Fraud within family is still fraud. Lauren leaned back, studying me. You realize what happens if you move forward: public filings, court disclosures, depositions. They'll say you're turning on your own. They already did, I replied. They called me a beggar. I'm just sending the bill. She almost smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then we make it clean. The door opened, and Daniel Park, the independent auditor I'd hired, stepped in, carrying a folder thick with printouts, his tie crooked, his expression tight. I ran parallel checks through the family trust accounts. You'll want to see this. He laid down the document, scans of my mother's private banking activity. Susan Carter withdrew $65,000 from your discretionary grant fund last spring, transferred into a spa franchise owned by her friend under the tag Consulting Investment. I stared at the papers. My father's voice from years ago whispered at the back of my mind, money can't buy family, son. I closed my eyes briefly and thought, no, but paperwork can prove who really had won. We worked for hours, tracing every route where their ambition had bled into my goodwill. The trust fund, once meant for future medical care, was a sieve. My father's account showed a steady drip of withdrawals labeled maintenance and consultant fees. Lauren's fingers moved fast across the keyboard, documenting every line. Around noon, she turned the laptop toward me. There's more. Look at this. On the screen was Emily's signature, clean and perfect, at the bottom of a document approving the redirection of family funds. She wasn't just a bystander, Lauren said. She consented to it. I didn't answer, my chest ached with something too complicated to name. She clicked again, pulling up another file. And your mother? She didn't just know. She created a secondary account using an alias, SC Holdings, to route the money through. Lauren exhaled, rubbing her temple. This isn't just bad accounting, Ryan. It's criminal misrepresentation. You could press charges. A new email pinged into her inbox, flagged confidential, from my father's PR firm, subject line, Operation Silence. She opened it, scanned, and her brows knit. They're planning a press conference within the week. I read the first paragraph, a drafted statement accusing me of embezzlement, of misusing company funds to sabotage Emily's engagement. My throat went dry. They're building a narrative before the evidence can speak. Lauren nodded slowly. You can end this now by filing first, but if you do, you'll burn every bridge left. I looked at her, this woman who had once been a classmate, now watching me like someone measuring how much humanity I had left. I already lost them, I said. All I'm doing is proving it. I took the pen from her hand and signed the authorization. Begin legal process. She pressed her lips together and slid the papers toward her assistant. The stamp clicked down, filed, active review. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Sunlight glinted off the edge of the desk, catching on an old photograph that had slipped from one of my folders. The three of us, my father's hand on my shoulder, Emily beaming, my mother's smile perfect. I stared at it for a long time, then folded it neatly and slid it into a separate binder labeled Evidence, Emotional Archive. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. It's time the record reflects the truth they erased. A week later, my name was everywhere. Ryan Carter, accused of misusing corporate funds to destroy sister's wedding. Headlines crawled across morning news tickers, my face blurred behind captions like, Family Feud turns financial. Reporters camped outside my apartment, their microphones pointed like rifles. My parents went on television, voices trembling with rehearsed sorrow. We're heartbroken, my mother told a local anchor. Our son has changed. My father sat stiff beside her, nodding as though grief had weight. Emily posted a sunset photo on Instagram. Some people can't stand others' happiness. I watched it all from behind closed blinds, audit report in hand, 200 pages of receipts and transfers, every illusion dismantled. When I finally stepped outside, the cameras flashed like lightning. Mr. Carter, do you have a statement? Someone shouted. I met their eyes and said quietly, I didn't cancel a wedding. I reclaimed what was mine. That afternoon, I held a brief press conference at Lauren Mitchell and Partners, the building's glass facade reflecting a swarm of cameras. I walked to the podium, set down the binder, and began reading slowly, every word deliberate. For years, my company funded family expenses under formal contracts. Those contracts included cancellation clauses. When my authority was revoked by insult, I acted within my rights. The room was silent except for the click of keyboards. Do you fear this will destroy your family? A journalist asked. I looked straight ahead. I'm not destroying a family. I'm unmasking one built on my money. I handed copies of financial summaries to the press, account numbers redacted, signatures clear, evidence neat and irrefutable. Hours later, Lauren called from her office, voice sharp. The Suffolk County Court accepted the filing. The case is official, misuse of trust funds, Carter versus Carter. That night, my phone buzzed again, my mother's voice shaking through the speaker. Please, Ryan, don't do this. It'll ruin us. I listened to her sobbing, the same pattern of guilt that once kept me obedient. We're not ruining anything, I said softly. We're just pulling down what was already rotten. The next morning, the narrative began to shift. A video surfaced online, footage from the engagement night, my father's voice echoing through the ballroom, "Get this beggar out." The room gasped, and the internet roared. Sympathy poured in, turning the tide I hadn't even tried to control. Within hours, one of the vendors released a formal letter confirming all payments had come from Carter Solutions LLC. Then Lauren sent another update. My father had quietly pulled double withdrawals from the family trust weeks before, using it to cover a new mortgage under his name. That was more than betrayal, it was evidence. That evening, Lauren called again, her tone careful. We traced the anonymous tip that started this audit. It came from Daniel Park. I went quiet for a long time, remembering the man's quiet professionalism, how my father had once called him disloyal before firing him. He was trying to protect the truth, I said. The city outside my window glowed under summer humidity, lights reflected in the river like coins tossed for luck. I stepped onto the balcony, the audit binder heavy in my hands. Below, Boston pulsed with noise, horns, chatter, life continuing as if nothing monumental was unraveling above it. Lauren joined me at the railing, her voice low. The hearing set in 10 days. After that, there's no turning back. I looked out over the city, the wind catching my tie, the taste of salt from the harbor faint in the air. I'm not looking back, I said. I just want them to face justice, not another dinner table. When we went back inside, she shut off the lights, leaving only the glow of the laptop screen. On it, the final confirmation blinked in blue letters, court date confirmed. Carter Family Trust hearing, August 9th, 10 a.m. The office was silent except for the hum of the city below. For the first time in years, I felt that silence wasn't emptiness, it was power waiting to be spoken aloud. I closed the binder, straightened my tie, and exhaled. The truth was finally louder than the name Carter, and soon it would be on record. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and quiet judgment. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the Suffolk County courtroom, turning every speck of dust into something that looked deliberate, almost sacred. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded on the file labeled Carter versus Carter. To my right, Lauren Mitchell adjusted her papers, her composure sharp as glass. Across the aisle sat my parents, Richard and Susan Carter, rigid, gray-faced, every movement practiced for sympathy. Behind them, Emily and Nathan whispered, their heads close, avoiding my gaze. The clock struck 10 o'clock. The bailiff called the session to order, and for the first time in my life, my name, Ryan Carter, was followed by the word plaintiff. I stood and began to speak, my voice detached, steady, like I'd rehearsed this moment for years. For over a decade, I funded my family's life under the promise of unity, mortgage payments, vacations, medical bills, even an engagement party that ended with me being called a beggar. Every expense was processed legally through my company, Carter Solutions LLC. Every one of them left a trail. Lauren clicked the remote, and the first slide appeared on the screen. The numbers glowed under the courtroom lights, bank statements, Carter Family Trust, the withdrawals lined up like bullet points of betrayal. She advanced again, the forged PDF bearing my initials, the mortgage note tied to the Hilton Head condo, my property used as collateral in my father's private dealings. The opposing lawyer, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, rose smoothly, "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding between family members. My clients acted with mutual consent under informal agreements." Lauren didn't flinch. "The law doesn't recognize informal consent when forged documents exist," she said, her tone like ice-cutting air. My father slammed his hand against the table. "You're destroying this family, Ryan." His voice echoed through the courtroom. I met his eyes. "No, Dad. I just stopped paying for its illusion." The judge's gavel came down once, steadying the room. The silence that followed was louder than any shout. Lauren resumed, "If it pleases the court, I'd like to submit supplemental evidence." She played a video, the footage filling the courtroom, the engagement night, my father's voice reverberating, "Get this beggar out." The room fell dead silent, every glance turned toward the defense table. My mother pressed a tissue to her face, my father's jaw worked like he was chewing broken glass. Daniel Park was called to the stand next, the soft-spoken accountant clutching his notes with both hands. Mr. Carter instructed me to alter trust documents, he admitted, to hide withdrawals listed as maintenance fees. When I refused, he terminated my contract. I didn't look at my father, the truth was enough. Then something unexpected happened. My mother stood, tears streaking her cheeks. I knew, she said quietly. I knew everything. The room held its breath. I stayed silent because I was ashamed. We couldn't let people think we'd failed as parents. I thought if I said nothing, it would go away. Her voice cracked. It didn't. The judge nodded solemnly. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. You may sit. Before she could, Emily shot up from her seat, fury twisting her features. This isn't fair. He just wants revenge because he was never part of the family. I didn't answer. I simply turned to the screen where her own signature sat neatly under account authorization. Emily Carter, proof she'd approved the withdrawals she claimed ignorance of. Her shoulders slumped. My father looked at her, then at me, and for a moment, I saw confusion instead of anger, like he couldn't understand how his empire had turned to dust. The judge turned to me. Mr. Carter, would you like to make a closing statement? I rose slowly. I'm not asking for punishment, I said. I'm asking for accuracy. I don't want them jailed. I want the record to reflect what words never did, that I paid for a family that stopped existing years ago. The judge leaned forward, her tone even. Sometimes justice doesn't need to be loud, Mr. Carter. It just needs to be documented. When the ruling came, it was clear and merciless. The court ordered full restitution of the misused trust funds to Carter Solutions LLC. The Hilton Head condo was confirmed under my ownership. My parents were barred from accessing or benefiting from any corporate assets tied to my company. The gavel struck once, case concluded. The room exhaled, my mother's sobs filled the silence. My father didn't move. I sat there, numb, watching the ink dry on the order that formally severed us. Outside the courtroom, the hallway buzzed with reporters, cameras flashed, questions flew. I didn't stop. Lauren walked beside me, holding the case folder like it contained the ashes of something sacred. You got everything back, she said quietly. I shook my head. No, I got my silence back. We stepped out into the Boston sunlight, and for a second, I didn't feel victorious, just emptied, like I'd traded one kind of silence for another. 6 months later, the ocean was the only sound that mattered. Cannon Beach stretched endless and pale beneath the Oregon sky, the horizon drawn in strokes of silver and blue. The condo, once the crown jewel of my mother's lies, was finally mine, though I'd already listed it for sale. I stood among open boxes, sunlight spilling through sheer curtains, the sea wind brushing against the papers on the table. In front of me sat the folder labeled Final Settlement, Carter vs. Carter, beside a faded photograph of my family. I picked it up, the edges soft from years of handling, the smiles too rehearsed to feel real anymore. The phone buzzed, a message from the realtor confirming the transfer had gone through, the condo was sold. I opened my laptop and began typing a new document, Redline Foundation Charter. The idea had come weeks earlier, a grant for young people cut off from their families, kids who'd been told they were ungrateful for wanting independence. I typed slowly, choosing every word with care. I once paid for silence. Now I use that money to give others a voice. When I clicked sign, I felt something uncoil inside me, not triumph, not even relief, just stillness. That night, as I boxed the last of my things, an envelope slid under the front door, no return address, no postage. I tore it open. Inside was a single photograph from that night at the hotel, my father's face caught mid-sneer, the chandelier glinting above his head, me in the background, turning away. On the back, Emily's slanted handwriting. This was the moment it all fell apart. I stood by the window, holding the picture up to the fading light, the ocean shimmering beyond the glass. Then I tore the photo clean in half. No, I said aloud. This was the moment it was rebuilt. The following morning, Lauren emailed, the Carters filed a petition for leniency and mediation. I read it twice, then deleted it. Some things didn't deserve replies. A week later, a local paper ran a feature, Ryan Carter launches Redline Foundation for Independent Youth. The tone was different this time, no scandal, no speculation, just quiet acknowledgement. Public opinion had shifted. I wasn't the traitor anymore. I was the man who stood his ground when blood tried to buy silence. Before leaving, I took one last drive to Hilton Head. The beach was empty, waves folding gently against the shore. I walked to the condo's porch, now stripped of furniture, and left a single notebook inside the drawer of the bedside table. On the first page, I wrote, "Money bought their silence. Truth bought my peace." Then I closed it, turned off the lights, and walked away. Back in Oregon, the Redline Foundation began its first round of scholarships. The office was small, just 2 desks and a view of the sea, but it was mine, built not from inheritance, but intention. Sometimes at night, I'd stand on the shore, watching the tide erase footprints as fast as they appeared. The past was like that, always trying to wash itself clean, but the record I'd made couldn't be erased. The sun dipped below the horizon, staining the water in amber and fire. My phone vibrated in my pocket, one unread message, "We're sorry," from Mom. I didn't open it. I locked the screen, placed the phone on the sand, and watched the waves edge closer. I started walking, each step leaving a mark the ocean would soon take. My voice was barely a whisper over the wind. They called me a beggar, but I'm the only one who ever paid for the truth. The sky darkened, the waves kept their rhythm. And for the first time, the silence I carried wasn't empty, it was mine. Some stories end in noise and revenge and one last explosion of pain. Mine ended in quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't mean defeat, but peace. I learned that sometimes justice doesn't come wrapped in applause, it comes in paperwork and patience and knowing you finally told the truth, even when no one wanted to hear it. My name was dragged through headlines, family whispers, courtroom air, and yet, in the end, I walked away with something they could never steal again: freedom. If you've ever been silenced, underestimated, or made to feel like you owed the world for existing, remember this: you don't. You can start over. You can rebuild. You can reclaim your own name. Betrayal has a price, but truth always pays it back with interest. If my story resonated with you, let me know you're here. Drop a hi, or tell me where you're watching from. I read every comment, and I mean that. It reminds me I'm not speaking into an empty room. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about finding strength after being broken. My name is Ryan Carter.